We're back with another political show, and we meet to discuss another interesting topic is Mustafa and Alex. You're welcome to the show.
Okay, we're going to focus on the racial and the political and the economic turmoil in America. Um, in the middle of voting in a black district, the Supreme Court said that the voting had to stop and that districts across America, specifically this was Louisiana versus Calais, but black districts all over America have to be gerrymandered, which means reconfigured in such a way that it doesn't make the district majority black because that's racist because those districts were made that way to actually address inequality in America. So that has to be reversed. They're doing it all over the country. The Republicans are doing this because they know there's no way that Donald Trump can win with the way he's destroyed this country unless you rearrange the voting districts all over America to benefit the Republican Party. A lot of that is going on, and the Democrats are also refiring, like in Virginia, making up new districts. So America is coming to a point now where you define the districts so that your party wins. This is madness. Okay, now what I want to argue today is that even even if well, let me get back to this point about Trump. Trump is messing up the economy, so he wants a free pass. He wants the Republicans to win. So he's basically, as far as I'm concerned, using a loophole to try to change voting districts so he can get away with the rubbish he's doing. With the war, we know that all over the world, not just in America, prices of oil, prices of gas is going up, food, fertilizer, farming, everything is a mess. So by redoing the districts, he helps to get away with doing this crap. And it's amazing that this can even happen in America, even if you reframe the districts. I wonder what Americans are thinking of if they're going to vote for the Republicans in the primaries coming. I mean, not in the primaries, in the main elections coming in December for Congress and Senate. Now, what I was going to argue secondly is that it really doesn't matter, even if you reframe the districts and even if you keep the districts the same and blacks vote and they're not disenfranchised and the Democrats get in office, nothing is going to change for black people. Nothing's going to change for America. Since 1970, black people have been getting worse and worse economically in relation to whites. The gap of wealth is going, and crime is going up. And it looks like there's a total disintegration of black culture in America. Everybody's on Instagram trying to wonder who Meg the Stallion is dating. But meanwhile, most of our young men are shooting each other and killing each other. So I'm taking the cynical view that it doesn't matter. The third view that I'm going to take is that the U.S. Constitution needs to change. It's just a broad constitution which says everybody is equal, but it doesn't address inequality, historical inequality, which you have to frame, which the government should jump in. It also doesn't address the fact that every living person in America has the right to water, food, proper schooling, and safety. It shouldn't be that, oh, you're free and equal, but you have to go and find water and things like that. No, the Constitution should step in and say that these things are guaranteed. And this is the prime function of the government is not only to make sure all people are equal and free, it's also to make sure that there's a safety net for human beings so that we have good conditions and that the government should do its best to address this. South Africa has something sort of like that. It's called redistribution and also dealing with the past. They have it in countries like Israel and too. When in Germany, when things were done bad to people, you have to redress it so that they are equal. Because we know that when America was started, all men are equal except for blacks, because all of them had slaves. So the Constitution needs to deal with not just racial issues and racial economic justice. It also should deal with education, justice, food, water for every American person, not just for Raytheon and weapons manufacturers and billionaires who don't pay taxes. What are your thoughts, Afolabi?
You're absolutely right. I mean, disenfranchisement or reducing voter power does not address the core issues, the core systemic issues, whether you split or concentrate voters. At the end of the day, if the maps are neutral, they can just not produce the outcomes that are expected, basically. For instance, you mentioned issues like poverty, crime, and mental health. I mean, this constitute systemic issues, whether or not black politicians are more. It may protect against worse outcomes, but it does not fix the core problems.
No,
For instance, if systems appear to be neutral, right? Things like school funding from local taxes and credit systems often still reflect the past inequalities in spite of the fact that the systems are neutral. And then
yeah.
again, the systems can continue to have wealth gaps without openly discriminating against them. So policies can be neutral in design, but unequal in effect and in practice. So at the end of the day, it's the systemic issues that you mentioned here that really matters. You see, the US system focusing on equal treatment under the law or neutrality, it's not about that. It's about the systemic inequalities that are built into the systems that are just cast in stone that they fail to address, basically. It's not about mapping or
No.
disenfranchisement,
Yeah.
really.
And we know because you got guys like Hakeem Jeffries, you got so many black politicians out here getting paid by APAC. So what you're doing when you vote for black politicians, you're just voting for who's going to get rich to be funded by APAC supports white supremacist settlerism in Israel. That's racist. This is the same thing that was done in South Africa, and this is the same thing that was done in America, where the settlers killed off the Indians and kept blacks as slaves. So what you see when you get people coming off is they get money from APAC, they get money from organizations which keep the system in the same as it is, make sure that drugs and weaponry gets into black communities. So once again, the Constitution needs to be a lot more practical and have safeguards, which says it's the government's job to address systemic issues. And if there are emergency, just like war is an emergency, the government has to step up to protect citizens in emergencies, which aren't their fault. You know, these neighborhoods that you see in the U.S., like Atlanta, in Detroit, in Baltimore, in Washington, D.C., where young black men are killing each other. This is a direct historical result of housing disenfranchisement, racially biased housing policies, uh, the fact that money is pumped into suburbs to keep their economies going. Suburbs live off of government grants. A lot of jobs that you see white people have are from government grants, which keep the system going. And then there's nothing in the black neighborhoods, and they say you're lazy, go to work. And they tell women stop having 6 kids and stop doing drugs. So meanwhile, not providing anything. And all of this goes all the way back, I would say, to slavery. You had slavery, you had Reconstruction. Every step of the way, black people have been 55,000 steps behind whites. Then you bring in immigrants from places like Somalia and other parts of the world. And when they come, they get grants. And then within a generation or two, they're doing better than Black Americans. There's a similar issue in South Africa in which the Blacks, they see other people coming in and doing well, but they're not doing well. And it's because of the historical brutality of apartheid that blacks are behind whites in South Africa. But then other people can come from other lands where they didn't have to go through that, and they already have capital and wealth, and they can build there. And South Africa's constitution addresses this. America's doesn't. What are your thoughts, Alex? Yeah.
What's truly insane is that we're watching a 21st century civilization trying to solve a biological and economic crisis using a 1700s hands-off operating system.
Oh yeah,
That was never designed
the
to
Constitution,
be
17. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah, that was never designed to be reactive to human suffering. It's like it's a post-voting paradox with more black representation in high offices than ever before. Yet the structural wealth gap and weathering health metrics are declining, as if those leaders aren't even there, they're just facades. So the
Yeah.
system has achieved, that level of perfect neutrality, as Afolabi said, where it doesn't need to be explicitly racist to produce racist outcomes. It just needs to protect that current distribution of, I don't know,
Wealth,
property.
property. Yeah.
Welfare,
Yeah, and call
social
it color
systems and economy.
blindness.
Yeah. Even
So yeah,
well-being.
The well-being, yeah, sure.
yeah, so we are effectively, not just the Americans, we're all effectively trapped in a loop where the ballot box, it acts as a psychological pressure valve, but the actual architecture of the country is a ceiling that I think no amount of traditional voting can break.
Yeah,
It's
let's look
something
at the
that,
US. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, it's something
No,
that it cannot be broken.
yeah, and it goes deeper than that because I always say the deep state runs America. No matter whether you have a Democrat, have you noticed like whether it's a Democrat, a black person, a woman, or whatever who's in office, it's the same thing. Every 4 years, there's a new war. The
Yeah.
rich get richer off of wars. Every 4 years, there's crime. So it's like people are voting just to select who's going to be the lucky person to get rich for a feudal state. America's a feudal state that, and you see it now because whites are suffering too. Trump said, "Oh, we have to fight Iran because they're terrorists. I don't care if petrol costs too fast or and if you don't have daycare." He said daycare is not important. He meant black and white people. So America is a feudal country in which voting is just where you get to choose who the feudal lord is. What do you think of Falabi?
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's the feudal lord that matters, really. The feudal lord will just replace the previous feudal lord. The systemic issues remain. And I'd argue that real improvement would only arrive if the system guarantee improvement in basic economic and social conditions. For instance, stronger welfare systems and public services. Structural reforms will always improve outcomes, basically. If the structural reforms are not carried through, it's almost difficult. But sometimes, if they're allowed, there are some trade-offs: cost, governance, how feasible is this politically? So these things are entrenched in the way government is being managed, and it's very, very difficult to see light at the end of the tunnel. But in my own opinion, voting rights and representation still matter, though, especially for preventing harm. But basically, long-term inequality is driven by deeper economic and institutional structures. Real progress for me would require fair political representation and broader economic and policy reforms beyond elections, basically.
It has to be enshrined in the
That's what it is. Yes.
like Scandinavian countries which deal with these issues.
Yeah, the
I
Nordic
saw the
countries.
tunnel at the end of the light. I can see the tunnel. We're almost there at into the tunnel. Okay, here's the last thing. This is horrendous. In the middle of voting, they stopped the voting in a black city because they knew who was going to win. That tells me that there's no such thing as democracy in America. Alex, can you imagine the government saying, DA passing a law and it goes through that the votes have to stop because it's not fair for black people to come together to vote and it's in the middle of voting? Could you imagine that happened in South Africa?
That would be crazy. That would
No, no, just tell people to
that would be
stop.
scary.
I'm telling you, that's gonna be scary. You're gonna see some people throwing tires on the roads and stuff like that. That shit is crazy. You couldn't you waited till the election started before you now made this new law and then you say stop voting. That means, and I'm saying it again, America doesn't have a democratic system. To me, that's tantamount to a coup. Because you're using force, because the police will come there and make you stop. That means America is a fascist, undemocratic state. What are your thoughts, Alex?
I think my final thought is that we have to stop confusing participation with power.
Yeah.
The craziest trick the system ever pulled was convincing us that if we just showed up every few years to pick a new brand manager, the warehouse would stop being looted, right?
Yeah.
And the numbers from 2024 to 2026, they aren't just statistics, they are death certificates for the politics as usual model. So I think Americans, okay, let me not say Americans, I feel like all of us, while living in countries where the Constitution acts as a firewall, protecting the wealth that was built during the era of enslavement, of you know, what happened in the
Colonialism, all
past
kinds of stuff. Yeah.
yeah, to make the current decline look like a personal failure of the community. I think it is perfectly engineered.
Oh
While
yeah.
we vote to make politicians into millionaires, billionaires, the structural flaw, the schools, the healthcare, the wealth building tools is being replaced by algorithms. They don't need a whites only sign to keep you out. They just need your zip code and your credit score and your gate kept. You're done. So I think it's only gonna get worse.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
And the U.S. prints money, but the money is printed by the Federal Reserve. It's controlled by the government. Money is power. I hate to say this. Money is actually the religion of the world because money is how you eat. It's how you sleep. Before money, it was hunting. You had to have bows and arrows and kill animals. That was the most, weapons were important. So the money is controlled by the U.S. Elite. They discern. Trump can't go to war unless the banks release the funds for the budget, the $1.5 trillion budget. So it's not Trump. It's actually the system. It's the powers that be that want this. Some people are saying they want there to be starvation in sub-Saharan Africa and Asia, so that they can take the land. That's why we're having a a blockade in Iran. The Iran war is not really just about Iran. It's about making sure millions of people who will die if this fertilizer doesn't get out of there within a couple of months. That's where we're heading to, and all we're doing is voting the people who are breaking down the structure. The world economy and the American economy are being dismantled by the elite, and they think that after it's dismantled that they won't be touched, and then when people die off, they can repopulate the world. This sounds like science fiction, but it looks like that's what's going on. Last thoughts of Falabi. Yeah.
Yeah, if there's any word in the dictionary like elite supremacy, basically that's what's happening. Uncertainty, I mean, this is absurd. I mean, when in the middle of an election, you just stop voting or counting or whatever it is. Uncertainty and disruption in elections and constant legal changes, it weakens your trust in the system itself. And this is a system that is already with the judicial system in the US is already very, very weak. I mean, everybody see it as puppets of the government in power. It's partisan. So, I mean, you do this kind of thing, it just reinforces people's weakened trust in the electoral system. And this will lead to voter apathy, basically. And when people lose their right, to make decision on who leads them, then what do we have really? A country that has been an example of democracy for ages. I mean, it's absurd.